My name's Beth, and I'm a programming coordinator for the St. Johns County Main Library. November is Native American Heritage Month, and we are about to learn about a sad but also very important moment in St. Augustine history, when during the 1870s, a group of a little over 70 Plains Indians were brought here to St. Augustine and were made to stay here at the fort. It was known as Fort Marion at the time. We know it today as the Castillo de San Marcos. So I'm going to go talk to Park Rangers Jill Leverett and Amy Vela to learn a little bit more about this history.
Though the Castillo de San Marcos was originally built as a protector, a few times it was also used as a prison. In 1875, the United States Army sent 74 prisoners from 5 different Plains Indian tribes east to St. Augustine to be incarcerated at the Castillo, at the time known as Fort Marion. The prisoners were mostly male warriors from the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Comanche, Kiowa, and Caddo tribes, and they had been sent out here after the Red River War, which was a result of tensions between Native Americans and white settlers coming to a violent head. These prisoners were sent out here at random, mostly to make an example of them to the rest of the Plains Indians. They were shackled, kept under lock and key, and confined to the rooms in the courtyard of the Castillo. Conditions were very crowded, and disease and despair were constant concerns. About 6 months after the prisoners arrived, a new jailer took over at the fort, Captain Richard Henry Pratt, and he instituted many important changes. The chains and shackles were removed, the barricade to the gun deck was removed, and the prisoners were given materials to build their own barracks building on the north wall of the gun deck, where the sea breeze could keep them much more comfortable than when they were confined to the rooms downstairs. Pratt recruited local women to teach English, Christianity, and other elementary level skills to the prisoners. Pratt even created a guard unit of the prisoners, giving them army uniforms and weapons and teaching them to drill and guard themselves. The prisoners were also encouraged to make money to send to their families by making things to sell to tourists. They would polish sea beams and paint them, make bows and arrows, and the most famous artwork produced by the prisoners here at the Castillo was the ledger art. The Plains Indians were talented artists before they came to Fort Marion, although their artwork was traditionally done on animal skins. Here at Fort Marion, they were provided with large pieces of paper from ledger books, as well as oil pastels and colored pencils to create their artwork. These ledger artworks are some of the best records we have of the Plains Indians' times here at Fort Marion. They depict scenes such as their train ride from the west to Florida, the view from the gun deck when they were here, classes being held in the chapel, buffalo hunts being held on the grounds, and many more. Pratt worked to assimilate the prisoners while they were here, asking them to give up their cultural identity to learn a new way of life. Some of the prisoners were more receptive to this program than others.
Now, Captain Pratt, he was the warden at the time, and he believed in a policy of assimilation. He believed their only chance at survival was to fit into the Western society taking over their land. Now, this gentleman, Captain Pratt, he went on to be the superintendent of Carlisle University in Pennsylvania. And at the end of 3 years, those Plains prisoners, they are given the choice to continue their education up north or return west. Of course, it's not to the west they left behind. Unfortunately, it'll be to reservations. And some of the older men that left behind wives and children, they will return west. Some of the younger men, though, that didn't have families, they continue up north and continue on their education. You know, today, the Castillo, it holds a lot of different memories for a lot of different groups of people. And I encourage you to come here and explore what it holds for you. But I can tell you one of the unique things left behind from these periods, there's ledger art that the Plains Indians created, and there are engravings done into the walls by the prisoners. And truly those physical things help tell their story. So please, come, check it out.
Well, now that we know a little bit more about the context of how and why the Plains Indians were staying here in St. Augustine, let's go head up to Jacksonville and meet with National Park Service Museum Curator Anne Lewellen, who's going to show us some pieces of the ledger art that were left behind and that belong in the Castillo de San Marcos's museum collection. Hi, I am here with Anne Lewellen, who is the museum curator of the Castillo de San Marcos collection. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit about what ledger art actually is? What does that mean, ledger art?
Sure. Well, historically, Indians would draw on anything available to them, such as cliff walls, caves, and then progressing, to buffalo hide, teepees, shields. They would, create art using natural pigments and sticks on natural surfaces. Well, once that way of life started changing and the buffalo started getting killed, they started getting kind of rounded up, and their way of life started changing, they had to find other ways to draw. So they would use ledger paper, which is basically big sheets of oversized paper used by white people to keep accounts or run their books. So they would either be given these big sheets of paper, these blank books, or they'd actually sometimes take them from people that they killed during battle. And they started using that as a form of drawing. Plus it was portable, so they could just fold them up like a book and take them with them wherever they went. And they would also start getting new forms of material to draw with, such as crayons, colored pencils, and even watercolors from white, either soldiers or citizens. So they started drawing on this paper these kind of new form of artwork. So it's kind of transitional artwork between the original drawing on natural surfaces, and then moving on into the 20th century with actually more trained art from art schools and things like that.
Oh, wow. So what happened to the ledger art once, as far as the Plains Indians that were at the Castillo? I know you have a few pieces here. How did these end up in the collection, or where did the other pieces go? Are there pieces elsewhere, basically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of this artwork all over the country. We have 5 pieces here. We think that they were probably sold by the Indians at the Castillo to make some money. So I read a little account about quickly, within a few months of the Indians being at the fort, they learned that they could sell the pictures for $1 or $2 a piece and make some money. So their capitalism of white America started coming through to them within a couple months of being in prison.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure exactly how these 5 pieces got into our art collection. They've been here since at least 1943. So they were probably either donated by someone or maybe even purchased by someone and put in the collection. But yeah, there's pieces all over the country, and at the end of the video I'll give you a couple more sources of places you can look online, or books that you can learn more about the subject and see some more of this beautiful artwork.
Because the ledger art, it wouldn't just be ledger art that was created here in St. Augustine, but also just other Plains Indians making ledger art.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It was done by other groups, not just people in prison at the Castillo.
Okay.
But this is kind of the most well known, and there's a couple books specifically about art created while they were at the Castillo.
Yes, we have those in the St. Johns County Public Library System's collection, and I will definitely share those resources with everyone in a few minutes. But can we go ahead and take a look at some of those pieces that you have in the collection now?
Sure. Let's come get a close-up look at them.
All right, great. So it almost looks like there's 2 different styles here on the table. One looks a little older maybe than the other. Is there a difference here, or?
Yeah, so this lower picture is actually a circa 1875 or 1876 picture done by an imprisoned Indian. This is the Comanche Peyote man, who's a ceremonial priest. You can see he's holding a fan, and he's a religious leader who probably travels from village to village on his horse to take part in religious ceremonies.
And this looks like it's pencil with a little bit of colored pencil.
Correct.
Neat.
And this upper drawing is done by a man named James Ochai, which you can see his name and the date of 1943 in the corner.
Oh, yeah.
He was a Kiowa tribesman who was actually born in 1906 and was trained at the University of Oklahoma as an artist. But he joined the Coast Guard in 1943 during World War II and was stationed in St. Augustine with many of the Coast Guardsmen. And he was actually detailed over to the National Park Service for a couple days a week to help them interpret these drawings. So he came over, kind of helped figure out some of the symbolism of these drawings, and did his own very similar drawings, but in his current style that he was trained in.
Oh, okay. That's really neat.
Yes.
So then, what is this beautiful
This next one is Kiowa warrior in action. So every feather in his bonnet signifies the taking of a scalp or the bringing in of horses or captives or any other brave action that a brave would take. The shield has a thunderbird design on it. The horse is decorated for his warpath. And the warrior is either left-handed or meeting enemy on the opposite side.
And this one looks like it's maybe pencil and maybe watercolor or...
Correct.
Wow. It's really, the details are so interesting. It's really beautiful.
Right. And then up in here, here's the 1943 version from James Ochai. Similar, but he has a much different artistic style.
Mm-hmm. It's neat that to see compared the shield. That's neat. All right.
Okay, this drawing here is Kiowa going on the warpath. So the horse is trotting. You can see this one has a little more three-dimensional effect of the horse and his legs compared to some other ones.
Oh yeah, you're right. If you look at this one, especially compared to this one here, definitely a lot more three-dimensional. Neat. And I guess maybe that's just, I mean, look at even like the features on the horse. His face, he's got a lot of character in that eyeball. It's really beautiful, the color choices and
you notice, typical of most of the ledger art, they're kind of basic. They don't have a lot of background to them, and a lot of them are just kind of simple two-dimensional lines. There's not a lot of three-dimension. These two horses are kind of an exception to that, but a lot of them are just kind of fairly flat, and there's not a lot of perspective to the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
To show perspective, they'd often just put something above something else instead of making it smaller in the background, like we might do today.
right. And then what do we have over here?
This is a Kyo Hunter shooting an elk.
And you can see it's kind of, from far away it's a little hard to see the bow, but you can, when I get closer in, you can see it.
And some of these have faded quite a bit. The pencil has faded over the years because these are almost 150 years old at this point.
Right, and you can see this spotting on the paper. I guess this paper is probably not acid-free archival paper.
And with the elk with that coloring symbolizes that it's the fall time with the darker.
Oh, okay. So speaking of the deterioration of the materials, how do you care for these in the collection? Are they, how often do they see the light of day?
These are very sensitive, very light sensitive due to the color and the pencil and the watercolor. So we don't want these out in light very often. We'll put them on an exhibit for special occasions. For example, we had them down at the Crisp Ellert Art Museum at Flagler College for a couple months for a special exhibit. And also we had one on exhibit in the Visitor Information Center in St. Augustine for the city's 450th anniversary. So those are kind of special occasions. Otherwise, we try to limit both visible and UV light as much as possible. Mm-hmm. So I keep them in folder in a dark, in a drawer, flat file cabinet. So keep them flat, dark, low humidity, fairly low temperature. That'll help them preserve as long as possible.
That's really great. And if you're actually interested in learning more about how things are kind of kept, Anne was very gracious and did a tour of the larger collection. So we kind of learned a little bit about those methods, and you can still watch those on our social media pages. So I'll put a link to that video in this video. All right, moving around the corner.
This is kind of the most complex one of the 5 that we own.
Yeah.
There's a long leafy vine in the middle, and according to James Ochai, who like I said, kind of interpreted some of the meaning, this long leafy vine means it's summertime, a long summer. But there's not much fruit, which means it wasn't a very fruitful year for the produce, the fruits and vegetables. But there is a bison that was hunted, and the red means that he was, being killed. The little blood in his mouth.
Yeah.
So there's an Indian, or there's a hunter over here with a, you can see he has a gun, and then the bison.
Yeah, and this looks like, I mean, is this a soldier? What's...
Yeah, so then in the lower part, it's a Plains chieftain confronting a soldier, but you can see they're friendly because they're both kind of extending their weapons, down on the ground, not out towards each other.
Gotcha.
And the Indian has his shield facing toward himself, which also indicates friendship.
Gotcha. Beautiful detail coming off of his...
And
I guess that's off of the shield that's coming off of.
Right, and he has silver amulets on his arms, and that silver would have come from Mexico.
Oh, wow.
So there's probably some trade going on there.
Mm-hmm. So it's neat. It seems like the pictures we've looked at so far are maybe what the Plains Indians' life was like at home, like they're reminiscing.
Correct. But if you go to these next two, these two aren't in our collection. These are reproductions that I printed out.
Okay.
But these actually showed life once they came to the Castillo.
Okay.
So you can actually recognize the Castillo in this picture right here.
Yeah.
Here's one of the garritas, the tall tower in the corner.
It's interesting because with the color, it makes you wonder. I know the Castillo was painted at.
It was white, yes. But it might have been fading by that time.
That's neat.
So there's two soldiers there. But yeah, the ledger art was both showing their kind of their past life, what they were in the past, and then also their current situation of being in prison, what they saw in St. Augustine.
I feel like I've seen a picture that's maybe in the collection of the Historical Society of a circus. Maybe they visited.
You're correct.
That's pretty.
There's also one that shows them catching a shark on the St. Augustine Bayfront.
I don't know. I've seen that one.
Yeah. So you're like, well, they didn't see many sharks out in the plains.
No. I mean,
and this last one's really interesting because it shows the Castillo, shows them lined up, but also you can see the St. Augustine Lighthouse here.
Oh, yeah.
And a ship in the distance.
That's so cool. And actually, you can see the new lighthouse and the old lighthouse that hadn't quite crumbled into the sea yet.
But the caption is kind of symbolic, though. It says, "Melancholy prospect from Fort Marion day after arrival." That shows that there was not a good thing that they'd now been in prison before. Until they ripped away from their existing way of life and brought to this new world with white settlers.
And it was a terrible journey on the train. I mean, they were, I think, kind of treated like an exhibit on the train where they'd stop and
whatever town they stopped at, they'd get out and they were in shackles and people come out and gawk at them.
It's really sad. Okay, so over here.
Here's just a couple more of the James Ochai drawings from 1943.
And these were just ones that he did. I wonder if, I guess you don't know if he was looking at other ones that.
I do not know.
They're really pretty. And that says Kiowa War Bonnet. Neat. Wow, these are so beautiful. I'm so grateful that you're sharing these with us.
You're welcome. I'm glad I can share them with more people.
There are other items in the collection that date from this period, like this wooden arrow shaft. It's about 22 3/4 inches long. The point is missing, and there are only fragments of feathers left. There is a note that this was purchased from a Plains Indian in the Castillo for a pound of cake by an E.A. Meyer in 1876. There are also these sea beans polished by Indian prisoners circa 1875 to 1878. Sea beans are seed pods from tropical islands that fall into the ocean and float on the currents, washing up far from their original source. They were often polished and, as Jill Leverett explained, sometimes even painted, and then sold to visitors of the Castillo by the prisoners.
Okay, for those of you who want to learn a little more about this topic or look at some more of these pictures, there's a couple of books available. One is called Kiowa's Odyssey, a sketchbook from Fort Marion, edited by Philip Ehrenfeit. And there's a copy right here that's actually at the St. John's Public Library, so you can check that out if you're interested in reading more about it. There's also another slightly older book called Plains Indian Art from Fort Marion. by Karen Daniels Peterson, that has more on this topic. And another book is called Warrior Artists. That's by Herman Viola. So you can go online and check any of these books out. Also, there's actually some online collections if you just want to go online and look from the comfort of your home. There's some at the Smithsonian Museum of American History and at the Milwaukee Public Museum. So if you Google those, just Google Indian ledger art and put those will pop up on your first page, and you can look at some more of the artwork and read a little more about why they were done and how they were done and things like that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us, and we really appreciate it because this is November. It's National Native American Heritage Month, so I do think that this is an important topic to learn about and just be aware of in our own local history. So thank you so much, Anne. I appreciate your time. All right, have a good day.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It was very important, I think, to see those images and to learn a little bit more about this local history. Thank you so much to Amy Vela and Jill Leverett at the Castillo de San Marcos, and also Anne Lewellen at Timucuan Preserve, who showed us the images. And please be sure to visit us at the library very soon. You can also check out our catalog, www.sjcpls.org, to find more resources. Thank you so much. See you soon.